so I just wanted to say thank you to Senator Murphy for sponsoring the bill that he sponsored, and talk about what this all means. You know, we know at this time of the year, it's very difficult for some people who are experiencing a high degree of loneliness, lack of connectivity, no family members, and we see a lot of that happening, especially this time of the year, when you know, there's no doubt about it that there's an increase in suicide this time of the year and a lot of other things. We did have a suicide yesterday in Norwalk. And we know that these kinds of things happen when people feel disenfranchised and they feel isolated. So without further ado, I would like to introduce and turn it over to Senator. Oh, we have Kadeem Roberts here as well.
I can't, my eyesight's bad, but that's Bob Duff in the back.
Yeah, just, yeah,
You should come up here and
Mark,
join us. Yeah, let's make it a seat for Bob up here. Mayor, thank you very much for hosting us here. Not a coincidence that I wanted to have one of these roundtables on my work on loneliness and social connection here in Norwalk, because Mayor, you do such a great job of leading on this issue, and being really thoughtful and proactive about supporting local community groups that are engaged in bringing people together, hosting events all throughout the year that allow folks in Norwalk and from the area to come and cross-pollinate ideas to make new connections. So this is a place that takes connection seriously, and I know you take it seriously, and that's why in part I wanted to be here to learn about the work that a lot of your partners are doing to try to solve this growing problem, loneliness and isolation. Why don't we do this? I'm going to, Emily, welcome all the council members. Really fantastic to see a good turnout from the council here. Why don't we do this? Why don't we just do a round of introductions around the table here? And then let me say a few more words about why we're here and the work that I've been doing on this topic. And then I'm going to just really ask all of you to, either share experiences, work, ideas, questions you have. We'll just open it up. So why don't we start with a round of introductions around the table? I'll talk and then we'll have a discussion.
Good morning, State Representative Kadeem Roberts. I represent the 137th District. You're actually here today in the district as well. So thank you guys for coming, and to my beloved common council members in the city, appreciate you guys for being here as well.
I'm State Representative Ann Hughes, representing East and Weston and Reading, also a social worker, also serving on Community Services, Aging and Labor and Public Employees Committee, but deeply interested in this epidemic of loneliness.
My name is Julio Montoya. I'm the Executive Director of the Norwalk Art Space here in Norwalk, where we give free art education, free exhibition space and studio space to emerging and established artists in the area. And a place where it has been a refuge and a place for community to unite.
I'm Jeff Katzman. I'm a psychiatrist and I run the education programs and every aspect of that at Silverville Hospital, psychiatric hospital in New Canaan. And we have created something called SHARE, that's Silverville Academy for Research and Education, with 40 affiliated faculty around the country. And our commitment in the next 2 years is to study and hold conferences and outreach events around the idea of loneliness and connection.
I'm Walker Holmes. I am Connecticut State Director and Mid-Atlantic Regional Director for Trust for Public Land. We connect everyone to the outdoors, and we believe that parks are where social connection happens.
Hi, I'm Rob Cashel, President and CEO of Family and Children's Agency here in Norwalk, and we are also a founding member of the Connecticut Council of Family Service Agencies.
I'm Gail Lanson. I'm the Executive Director of Mid-Fairfield Community Care Center, and Mid-Fairfield provides mental health services in the community and partnered with the City of Norwalk and Norwalk Public Schools on many initiatives to support children and families in their community.
My name is Deborah Lepschitz, and I'm a child psychiatrist in private practice in Fairfield. And I'm actually representing the board of Soul Together, which Ginger will elaborate a little bit more on. But I see lots of young adults and children with various disabilities, autism, developmental disorders, and I'm expanding my practice to include a couple of APRNs. I've been in the community for 25 years plus, and I have a lot of connections with schools, nursing homes, various pediatric practices, just people across the board.
Hi, I'm Ginger Smith, social worker as well, and I longtime social worker, 35 years. Just launched SOAR Together this spring as a way to bring the community together to help end the epidemic of loneliness and social isolation, which you'll hear me always say are two very, very different things, those interrelated, here in Fairfield County and hopefully in Connecticut and beyond. We have online and in-person programming ourselves, but what we found over the last 9 months is one of our biggest strengths is partnering with all of you. So we are moving in the direction of trying to pull everybody together. I'm an enormous fan of not recreating wheels when folks are doing things beautifully well in their own community. So we want to hear from everybody today about what you guys feel like you're doing best and what your needs are. And we hope to push forward together. So I would really like to change some of the nomenclature from using the word loneliness to using the word togetherness. I think Pavlovian dictates that, and maybe Pat's will get behind me on this one, that if we can start to change the way we look at it and start to change the way we talk about it, then we'll start to change the way we act about it. So that's sort of together. Thanks.
Celia Bobrowski, grew up in Norwalk, had a different career, came back to take care of my special needs sister who has mental health issues. She has been at STAR for, gosh, almost 50 years, and met Ginger through that relationship, and now I'm supporting and trying to help SOAR together any way I can.
My name is Mary Schuhart. I'm the Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club of Reading Easton, and our sole focus is giving our young people a community and a place where they can come together and become best versions of themselves.
I'm Kathleen Minicelli. I own Alice's Flower Shop in Bethel, Connecticut. And Ginger contacted me in the spring with her plans to start a store and was looking for somebody to help with the flowers. I've always believed that flowers can be a great speaker of the words we don't always have. And I certainly saw that during COVID, because when people couldn't meet together, the flowers worked together. So just always looking for ways that I can help out in that extent.
Hello, I'm Sarah Lee Berger. I actually am co-chair of Easton's Here to Help, which is one of the local prevention councils in Region 1. And our prevention council has been on the ground for 2 years now, but when we launched, we were the only town in Fairfield County that did not have a prevention council at the time. And so that was in the middle of the pandemic. And at the same time, I was also a Board of Ed rep for Region 9, which is Easton to Reading. I also work for United Way and have been part of the efforts to launch 988. So.
Good morning, I'm Vanessa Elias. I'm a certified parent coach, mental health activist. I am a NAMI support group facilitator for parents and kids with mental health issues and on the NAMI Southwest Connecticut board. I have my own practice, Thrive with a Guide. And when I was volunteering at Wilton Youth Council, I launched in 2018 Wilton's Big Block Party Weekend, which became a huge success, bringing many people together. I found that it provided the perfect excuse for people to reach out to their neighbors because they wanted to, but they just felt awkward. So finally, this spring, I launched my passion project, Block Party USA, which the hope is that we can bring people together. This time of year, family can be complicated, but neighbors not as much. So, you know, even though it's cold outside, you can have a block party, you can have people around, hot chocolate, cookies, and a fire pit. Make a big difference. And I personally know all about loneliness because I have lived in Wilton for 10 years, which is a record because I moved 28 times before that across the US and internationally. So I have apparently learned skills I didn't know you needed to, you know, become a community. And I'm really excited if anybody's read the new book by Jennifer Wallace on Never Enough. I'm featured in the book as well as the block parties and other community building.
Hi, I'm Maureen Aziel. I am the Education and Program Manager for New Canaan Cares. I have a background in public health. Ironically, I jumped back into community work right after the pandemic, as I sat on the sideline. And New Canaan Cares is really about building community, empowering youth, and strengthening family. And a lot of our work, that's what we do when we're creating our programs for the community. We also have done for Wallace. I'm really excited to be here, and hopefully I can provide some ideas.
Good morning, I'm Colleen Proster, I'm the Executive Director of New Canaan Cares. Maureen took all of that I was going to say, but yes, our three main pillars are empowering youth, strengthening family, and building community. And we're a 44-year organization in town. We are also the local prevention council for New Canaan. And we do responsive programming. So as the world changes and our families change in our community, we provide programming to respond to those needs. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm Reverend Anthony Weissman from the First Congregational Church of Darien, and I think just like all clergy, kind of in the trenches, trying to make community and togetherness happen.
Margaret Reynolds, I'm the Director of Foundation and Government Relations for Wakeland Boys and Girls Club in Fairfield. We have a clubhouse and 2 school sites and 2 clubhouses in Bridgeport serving youth from kindergarten through high school. Partnering with organizations has been a big part of what I've been doing. Most recently, Ginger has brought SOAR to the teens in our Bridgeport clubhouse, doing activities, helping them vocalize how they feel, whether it's, supporting people that have been lonely or dealing with loneliness themselves. I believe some of the social media sort of impact feeling like everybody else is with people, but they're all alone. So we serve really the majority in Bridgeport are low-income minority families that don't have the resources. So it is extremely helpful when there's organizations that can come in and work with all of our youth, not just teens, but we've seen it even in our school sites for the elementary school students through working closely with social worker at McKinley Elementary School in Fairfield. So anyway, it's appreciated, and I would love for, to learn more about the individual organizations and support that provide. Thank you.
You can, you want to introduce yourself?
What's that?
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, thank you. Apologies for being late. I'm Lisa Haddock. I live in New Canaan. I'm not currently affiliated with an organization, but I have worked in schools a lot, in middle school, and with kids with special needs. I have a master's in social psychology, so I'm just really interested in this. I've also moved around a lot, including internationally. So I have had to sort of experience getting a foothold in new places frequently. And thank you for having me here.
Thanks. My name is Bob Duck, State Senator, represent Norwalk and part of Darien. I want to thank Senator Murphy for coming here today. He's not new to this space of mental health issues and been fighting on these issues since the days in the State Senate up in Hartford, and he is a leading voice on these issues in the United States Senate. So thank you, Senator, for being here today, for choosing all to have this support discussion.
Great. Well, thank you all. Thanks for those who are here in the audience with us as well. A lot of leaders behind the round table as well. So just a few minutes on why I care about this. Bob's right. I've spent my career working in mental health policy, in substance abuse policy for the last 10 years in violence and anti-violence policy. I've also during that time, especially over the last decade, really worried about a country that seems to be coming apart at the seams a bit. You see this in all sorts of really worrying data. The new suicide data for last year came out, and it was the worst year on record for lethal self-harm. We obviously look at the rising rates of addiction and overdose, especially connected to drugs that are essentially designed to help you withdraw from life and to dull the pain that you're feeling. We see the rise in violence rates, both lethal gun violence, but just all sorts of damaging non-lethal violence, much of it political violence. We see the rise of political extremism and our instinct, which is growing, to retreat to corners politically and perceive the other as the enemy. And to me, it speaks to a real spiritual sickness in the country, a lack of purpose and meaning and connection that allows you to live healthy lives. And so, to me, I just came to the conclusion about a year ago that I wasn't really doing my job if all I was doing was sort of turning the dials of public policy. We needed to have a deeper conversation. Public policy leaders, elected officials had to have a deeper conversation about meaning and purpose and connection, the things that really drive a fulfilled life, and ask ourselves, is government really working on the things that matter to happiness and a good life? And I think the conclusion I've come to is that we are not, is that we are talking about a lot of important things, but not enough of them are connected to what actually brings people that purpose and happiness and connection. We all know instinctually, but the data tells us, is one of the most important things to make you feel like you have a life filled with purpose. And yet public policy is pushing us further away from each other, not bringing us together. And so what I've proposed is to just start by creating a forum in the federal government where we have a conversation about social connection and the lack of social connection that many Americans feel, and the role the government can play or can't play in trying to facilitate more of that connection. So the bill I've introduced is something called the National Strategy for Social Connection Act. It sets up an office, a capacity inside the federal government for agencies to talk to each other about the importance of connection, the importance of fighting isolation and loneliness, to come up with recommendations for how other levels of government can try to promote social connection, and to really start to build out a national conversation around how we do better. You've all already mentioned, some of the, obvious ideas about what government can do. And I want to sort of admit the limits to what government can do here, right? One of the first articles written about my work in this space was titled "Chris Murphy Wants to Help You Find Friends," right? and it was obviously sort of a dig at the idea that government had any legitimate role to play in social connection. I reject that. I think government does have a legitimate role, but I also understand that there's limits. We shouldn't overpromise. But we've already talked about the role that social media plays, especially with our young people, but for all of us in facilitating withdrawal. Connection is sometimes difficult. It takes a little bit of courage, right? And when you have fake connection right in front of you, it becomes an easy excuse not to engage in real connection. And our decision as a government not to regulate social media in the way that we've regulated every new technology out there that has upsides and downsides, that's a choice. That's a choice that we have made, and we can make a different policy choice. The lack of free time is a policy choice. We have decided to allow wages to become so terrible that people now have to work 60, 70 hours a week in order to make ends meet. The only way that you really engage with peers and families is if you have the time to do it. And so wage policy and our decision not to give people leisure time, that's a choice. And that has consequences for social connection. And then the erosion of public spaces, the erosion of meeting places, and the decision to not invest in that, that's a choice as well. We have seen this massive, nobody's listening to your advice. I thought you had influence. So the decision to spend all of our money invested in, acute care services instead of investing that money in, building up those third places, whether they be public swimming pools or block parties, that's a choice as well. And so I think there's a really legitimate conversation to be had here. And I think it's this is the last thing I'll say, and I'll turn it over to you. I think it's a really healthy conversation. because it has nothing to do with politics, at least in the way that we currently think about politics. We are so at each other's throats right now. And that's in part because we sort of start by, when we talk about policy, on the really controversial topics, like you throw immigration or abortion or healthcare into a room and everyone's gonna retreat to their corners, right? But you throw loneliness or isolation or togetherness, right? You throw those concepts into a room, well, people, they don't know where their corners are on that, right? They don't exist in many ways. And it makes for a much more functional, much more apolitical conversation. And it allows you then to kind of, get to policy in a more organic way, in a way that doesn't, as easily provide for polarization and conversations that lead to polarization. So that's part of why I'm attracted to this conversation too. It kind of scrambles the current political paradigm, which I think is like really necessary right now. So that's why I'm doing a lot of work in this area, and really glad to know that it's connected to a lot of work that's happening in the community. And I wanted to hear a little bit more today about what you all are doing. I wanted to hear suggestions for you about what public policy areas you think are related, and happy to take, questions on the work that I'm doing. So I will stop there. We have just, not enough time. We're like just going to begin this conversation today. But at this point, love to hear a little bit more from you about the work you're doing and how it connects to the things that I'm talking about. It'll be awesome. Yeah.
I'd love to start. I'm big.
We will go around the room if anybody wants to.
A big thing for me is, in order to get comfortable, you have to be uncomfortable. So, being that I'm listening around this entire table today, I do want to be honest with you all. Majority of spaces are from our cities, surrounding towns. So behind you guys are parents, CEOs, a lot of people that do a lot of things. So if we want to end loneliness, we want to make everybody feel connected. So I listened to you, the first thing you said was free, a free space. There are a lot of people that are looking for spaces to hold events, to allow people to meet and congregate. So that stood out to me as well. So if the people are, needing to be connected to that, we got to do a better job at promoting that. I listen to a lot of people that are physicians and psychiatrists. There are a lot of people in Black and brown communities that are suffering from mental health and other situations. We got to do a better job at getting you from Richfield or Canaan and just bringing you right into our neighborhoods and understanding where we're from and understanding where we come up and what trauma occurred for us and how you can help us be successful. I just listened to a lot of people here today, and I love that. Being one African-American male in the community of Norwalk, but being one of the youngest people at the Capitol, the biggest thing I do is I fight for people in my community. One, I sit on housing. Two, I sit on education. And three, I sit on children. I start with the conversation of, if a mom doesn't have the right access to benefits, who can counsel that mom and get her through that? I also sit on education, where you look at a school shooting on the news and you're like, oh, another one. Now, if it happens here, where are the people protected? Where are the teachers influencing them to understand the conversation of what guns are and how they affect our lives? So I'm big on just action. So I'm hoping that everybody brought a business card today. I'm hoping that everybody's ready to talk and ready to work. But for me, in order to fix loneliness, not really sit down and have these conversations. So I'm so grateful to our senator. I'm so grateful to our beloved mayor as well for allowing people to come in this room. I don't know too many people around this room, and I lived in North my entire life. Housing project, baby, to the Capitol. That's a story. And what I do is I come back to my city 24/7, and I'm everywhere in my city. So I just want you guys to understand, if you don't talk to nobody today, please talk to me. I got a stack full of cards. I'm trying to fix everything in my community, every day. Thank you.
Can I stay on that for just a second before we jump to something else? Because I think it's like first thing you said was really important. right? Because you can give people more social connection, but if it's only in a very closed environment, only with people who come from the exact same background as you, there's limited value to that connection. It's still valuable, right? But the question is for people that have been doing work on connectivity around here, like, what do you think of what Kadeem is saying? Which is that, like, one of the things you're saying, right? Which is, listen, there are barriers in this state, right, to understanding other people's experiences. And the most fulfilling social connection may be the kind that breaks through those barriers. Does that resonate with folks? Does it connect with any of the work that you're doing?
I think that's the value of third places, and that really is, it's nodding my head strongly when you said that, because I think that's really something that's missing. You can find community with groups that you join, of like-minded people, but to have places where you can go, where you don't have to spend money, and you can have these spontaneous, connections with people. You don't have to meet people there. You don't have to make a plan. People can just go there, you can be there, and you have experiences with people that you didn't plan to have experiences with. And I think that is enormously missing in our towns and in our communities. And I just having lived in Europe, where there are areas like that, where the downtowns are still pretty vital, and you can go and sit somewhere and you don't have to be there to buy something. It really does foster that sense of spontaneous community, I would say.
Of course, I'm going to talk about parks and public land trails. That's the work that I do. And I think, yes, they are those third places. They are free, they're public, they're parks and trails and places where people come together, where they meet each other, they find common ground. And what I really love, and we see it every day, is that then people put that common ground to greater use. They realize they have things in common, they have common challenges, they have common hopes and dreams, and then they work on that together. And yet the reality is that in this country, 100 million people don't have a park nearby, 28 million kids. And it is that way in Connecticut as well. And we are not investing in our parks and our public places. We're analyzing all of our cities. Every city is struggling. There are cities getting rid of their parks department. So thank you to the senator for co-sponsor and beaches. Yes, public spaces, absolutely. Connection to water, connection to each other. So thank you for your co-sponsorship of the Explore Act. Things like that are helping.
I'll just make a comment here, because I think I totally agree that those third places, those public spaces, those parks are really important. But as Ann is sort of referencing, one of the issues we have here in Connecticut is that there's some parks and public spaces that are open to everybody, and then there are others that are very exclusive. They're public spaces, but they are designed to make sure that only people from that geographic location, which tend to be people of the same race and income class, have access. And so sometimes our public spaces encourage real diversity and integration. Sometimes they do the opposite. So sorry. Were you saying?
Just picking up on all of this, and we're an organization, I know Gail's as well, and many others who went through the whole process of responding to issues around the pandemic. And I think, I will speak for myself, I think so many of us want to put that behind us. But the impact of the pandemic, the impact of the murder of George Floyd, I think we are still dealing with in so many different ways. And as it relates to the issue of loneliness, one of the things that came out of the pandemic, it seems to me, was an awareness of how we could use Zoom as a way to connect with people. We had a board meeting the other night at our agency, and we had about 3/4 of our board Zoom in for this meeting. I will tell you, the quality of the interaction is not the same. And I think, you know, I applaud you, Senator, and you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing us together, because frankly, we've got to get back to seeing each other in person. We've got to use it when it's efficient, but, you know, it's not the equivalent. And in whatever gatherings, I think we need to find ways to come together in person.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think the science backs that up. There's something different that happens in your biology when you are in physical proximity to another human being. So,
Yeah. First of all, I've been living with my wife in New Mexico for 27 years and we're here now for 3, and I'm just so honored that you're representing us. The work that my wife and I do is very much aligned with her values, which is an honor for me. I'm a weird bird of a psychiatrist, and then I've done improvisational theater for 30 years and studied how improvisers connect. What are the guidelines to connection? I've written a couple books about that. That brought me to an interesting place last year. And then I was invited to the first international conference on loneliness in a place called Hull, England. And there I met all kinds of people who were doing incredible work. And I just wanted to talk about one for a minute if I could, because I met a guy named Leon McQuaid who started something called Andy's Man Club. They identified that the very high rate of suicide among men and the difficulty of men connecting with each other. So they started a group of Andy's Man Club in the wake of a suicide of one of their brother-in-law, and 7 men showed up and followed by the rules. In 4 years, there are 190 Andy Man's Club all over England, Scotland, and Ireland. They reach, I think, 1 million men who rely on this as a force. They have now a paid staff. It is a remarkable kind of grassroots peer organization, and they just spoke to us on we have a loneliness connection results program that's online for clinicians around the country. It's just very powerful moving. So I just did the model and just put out there about how to connect is very successful.
The 2022 suicide data, you know, has tiny little silver linings in it. Young, actually, suicide rates for teenagers went down in 2022, but what drove the overall increase is middle-aged to older and older men, and the increasing number of guns that are now available for people who are having those suicidal ideations. And so, as I think many of you know, I do believe it's really important for us to have a targeted conversation about men's health right now, because I think men are going through something that is different and unique and challenging, and has to be talked about sort of in the context of the larger epidemic, but also as something separate and different. So I'd love to learn more about it.
I just wanted to, how would you say? Well, sorry, I stated out that I got the time mixed up, and I appreciate it.
We did do quick introductions, so we'll make sure everybody knows.
I'm Donnie Cohn, Rabbi at Congregation Good Shalom, Stamford, Connecticut, and very committed, really. We started something in Stamford called the Stamford Kindness Project, very much driven about how do we really see the face of God in every human being. And I guess now I'll share my piece from over here, because I do think that the diminishment of faith, house of worship, has certainly also contributed to loneliness. Somebody can be alone but not be lonely. Psalm 23 talks about, although I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil because I recognize God with me. And I think that notion of really trying to help support people find a sense of knowing that they're never alone is an important aspect. And also really trying to realize, there's no cost to walk into a house of faith. And there's spontaneous conversations, connections, networking, and people of all backgrounds, which is another way, I think, to help support and address the issue that we're facing today. But I really appreciate you convening this meeting, and look forward to the partnership.
So I'll send this to you. I gave a speech a couple of weeks ago about the importance of church and the importance of religious life, and there's just no way, I think, to sort of view the rising rates of isolation and the lack of connection to common good in isolation from declining religious institution membership. I mean, it's just, we have a plummeting of people who are now in regular connection with the religious institution. And for so many people, that was the place where they both found connection to other human beings, but also found a purpose of being. And that doesn't have to be the answer for everyone. But the problem is there has not been an adequate substitute for those people as folks have walked away from, membership in mosques, churches, and synagogues. And so I think it's a really important part of the conversation. And so glad that we have membership from religious leadership here. So.
I wanted to say thank you again for bringing this all together and for our representatives and elected officials. It really, I think, speaks volumes that are here for this conversation and this topic, and for such a nice intimate gathering of people. Like you mentioned, after the pandemic, everyone really wants to come together in person and solve these issues and brainstorm together and, co-develop solutions. So I thank you for that. One of the things that I also wanted to mention is, and we've touched on it with access. So places like the Boys and Girls Clubs that are so wonderful in our communities, that our students and families need desperately. And it might be something like an art center in Norwalk that provides free and open access to a building. These places are wonderful, but we also need to provide ways to get there. So in a place like Bridgeport, I don't know all the inner workings of how the bus systems might work at every one of the schools, but I know that there's other locations where, such as, Easton and Reading, we share a Boys and Girls Club. There is no transportation unless it's provided by the parent or guardian. So this is an area of funding that I think is critical. And as we mentioned, parents are working multiple jobs. So if we want to provide these safe places where students can come together after school, out of school, provide ways to connect, and from totally different backgrounds, for all different kinds of activities and clubs that maybe they normally wouldn't think about joining, but you're at a building and it's provided. So you get to test it out, test the waters, whatever. We need to figure out creative solutions on how we're going to get students to these locations, because providing access by the building is one part of it. Providing the access through transportation is the other part of it. So whether it's safe bus systems or buses that go from school to school to school in certain regions and just keep circling. Drop off a kid, bring them to the Boys and Girls Club, bring them to the middle school, bring them to the community center, and keep circling. Something of this nature. We need to start having these conversations, because parents can't do it alone, and not when they're working multiple jobs, and or they don't have the flexibility. And so that also speaks to the people who could be in this room, the people with lived experience who aren't here because they're working their multiple jobs, right? And so we need to meet them where they're at and figure out where are our Black and our Brown communities who are also having these issues, and our parents who are working multiple jobs. Where are they? What times are best for them? Where can we meet them at their locations in all of our various communities, and provide that access and that conversation so we can really hear them, because we can't design solutions on our own. We really need to hear the perspectives from other people who are in the trenches as well.
We head nodding, and I want to make sure I want to bring in some voices from the back too. So let's keep around the table. But you got something to say while here. So
just to add on to meet people where they are, I think that's really something to think about. And we have areas that we can think about out of the box. We have hospitals. There's things that we can do at the hospital, maybe wellness programs at hospitals. At schools, we do a lot of intergenerational programming, so bringing younger children with older children, or younger children creating things with seniors. That's something that we could do at, say, schools. Schools are a place of celebration at times. There's and at community schools, there's sports happening, there's orchestra happening. Instead of having a senior night for kids, why isn't there a senior night for older people? And that comes with partnership with the senior center in town. Obviously, there are always barriers, and those are things to figure out from the town level or the state level. But I do think that thinking about what we have access to and what we can layer on top of.
Yeah, and just a quick note here, all of this is connected to resources, right? I mean, you can't build transportation, you can't, adequately staff up these evening and weekend and after school events unless you have resources. And this is part of the question here is, are we spending our public resources in the right places, right? Because it's just a decision to spend it all in Medicare, Medicaid, or the Department of Defense instead of spending it on the stuff that we're talking about here.
Just to echo on what you're saying, it strikes me as the entire Fairfield County and all counties and all states are so siloed. So you have the city of Norwalk, the city of Bridgeport, the town of Fairfield. Everyone has amazing resources in some way in some of these cities. But what about like looking at things in a more of a district-wide manner? So you mentioned resources. Well, of course, if there are resources for each town, there'll never be enough resources. But resources for a region, resources for a county, then that becomes different. But that requires people to give up some of their position, right? Because they're no longer going to be the mayor just of Norwalk. Maybe they're the mayor of a couple of towns. Maybe there's a city, a district that's so you encompass more people.
I'd be happy to be the mayor of Fairfield County. No, I think that's right. I think this is a whole different conversation, but it is admittedly hard to tackle big problems 169 towns at a time. So it's hard. This is a big problem, and it's hard to resource 169 municipalities with the ability to do it.
Well, lots of questions, but you mentioned that there's a national strategy for social connection. What if we had a Connecticut task force that was a Connecticut strategy for social connection? It started in our state. So Representative Hughes and I started to talk about this with the councils of governments. It's been a good education for me. So I just calculated that I've lived in, I think, 8 different towns in Fairfield County. So I'm not born and raised in one, I've been in 8. So what it allows me to do is actually touch all different towns. So to answer your questions, I looked at the map the other day and Soar Together is already working in 12 of the 19 towns in West Coast. And I started in Norwalk. Open doors. Grassroots tennis. Then I went over to Bridgeport, right? And then I went to Reading Easton, which is where I'm from. So I know where my soul needed to go because I was born and raised here at Stanford Hospital. I've lived here 54 years. My family's been here for 80. So I too know what it feels like to be part of Fairfield County. We may look different, but I'm sure our stories are a lot more similar than you think. So I say that because the last thing I did before I left home this morning, I'm gonna cry, was grab a big stack of business cards and say to myself, today is the day we exchange our business cards. And then we shake our hands. And I invited a lot of people in this room today, and very few of them I'd ever met in person. Actually, I have families I've worked with for 4 years on Zoom, and I'm meeting today for the first time in person. Literally, people I have loved on Zoom, because Zoom was so exceedingly successful for people with disabilities. And I would say that and stand up because I'm 5 feet tall and I can never stand up enough, right? So that's a truth, actually. That's a truth. For people with disabilities and people who are nonverbal and people who can't express themselves, but by color or taste or sound or vibration of other people on a screen, it saved lives and reduced suicide rates of people in populations that we love to ignore. Okay, so that happens all the time. And I'm here today because there's so much more goodness happening than any of us are hearing. It's too loud, the darkness is. And the light is really bright, but only when we look at it. And today, thank you for the first, I'm going to say happy Hanukkah to those in the room who are celebrating. Thank you guys for being here today because it's a big day in your lives. And there are lots of places and people that you should be healing right now. And I'm really grateful that you're here today on this day. Heartfelt from me to you guys. And I said this to you guys this morning. I say it again to all in our community who are celebrating peace and love and light and loss today. That's where my heart goes. And it will always go there. Okay, I'm an evangelical Christian and a left-leaning Democrat, and I'm okay with all of that. And everybody knows that, and I never stop talking about sparking people. It's all about spark today. every time we walk in a room, it has to spark people with our social connections, right? And what I want to say here is, I've already seen longitudinal outcomes of the programs we're doing. And we need to research this. And we need to research the difference between social isolation and loneliness, because charts that I created, they're different. They're really different. They overlap, but they're different, and they're measured in different ways. And traumas in our lives will dictate, we experience them differently, which lead to different rates of suicide for different people based on traumas, yours being different from mine, but we both face them. There's a lot we need to address, but there's so much that's being addressed right here in Connecticut. It's beautiful to me. Every day I walk out of my house and I see you guys doing amazing things for people. And the world needs to see Connecticut as an example of the light. So I get that there's a national strategy for this, but there's a state here and people that reside in it that vote for our legislators. And our voices need to be heard and our actions need to be seen because they're gorgeous. So sorry, y'all knew that was gonna happen at some point today. I was gonna stand up and speak my piece. Psalm 23 is my piece too. It absolutely is. And I said that to you yesterday, right? And we're gonna start working together on Tuesday, because I'm going down to meet Rabbi Daniel's team, right? And we've already met in Bridgeport. And I've met so many of you beautiful people, and I can't wait to meet more. But it's not that the time is now, the time we've already been doing this, you guys. We have model programs that are super successful in Connecticut. And I think we just need to have some kind of a task force. I know there's a loneliness task force. I want a togetherness task force. So let's go with that. Like, let's just exchange business cards today. And if we have to do it offline or not, it doesn't matter. But I think we're doing such glorious things. And that's all I got. But I just hope that we all keep doing it together.
I certainly be happy to, work with our state policymakers on, on this at a state level. I agree with you you got to categorize, you got to talk about this in a positive, not a negative sense, which is why our, office is not called the National Strategy to Combat Loneliness. It's called the National Strategy for Social Connection.
Yeah.
In a positive way. Let me just pause here for a second and ask if there are, folks in the audience who want to just make a comment or two.
Everyone, my name is Stephanie. I actually work out indoors. Newish, a resident of Norwalk, about 3 years. Again, I feel like a lot of things have been said. Thank you for being here. My main, comment is, how do we get access to people to come in this room and be able to have these conversations? Because I forgot to mention it, maybe somebody on this side of the room, but we do have solutions, right? Like, this is not like a problem we have no solutions to, but how do we get people that are in the trenches, quote unquote, right, to come in this room and be able to speak up, to come in this room and talk about their experience? How do we give access to people to actually be here? I mean, there's wonderful faces, great people here, but a lot of them look the same, right? A lot of them look very alike. So how do we reach to our community and really, like, I don't know, is it going door to door, right? Is it holding smaller audiences where people are? Like, how do we meet people there to be able to be part of these conversations? Because these solutions are out there, right? They're not far in between. They're doing a lot of great work already. But how do we come together and bring people that are in the trenches to be part of this? So I don't see a way where we're going to move forward when these kind of conversations keep happening, but the people that are affected are not part of it.
I think it's I think it's a really important conversation, and I think this is a conversation with people that are implementing a lot of the work, but you have to have a conversation with people who are living the experience, right? And that, I think, is the next set of work here. So I think that's really, really important. Secondly,
so I was asked the question, how would I address loneliness?
Yeah.
And how I answer that is thinking about neighborhoods similar to what she said, right? We have a lot of representation coming from different neighborhoods, and the panel kind of like showed. And I think I grew up in the house projects here in Norwalk as well. And I think about loneliness, right? We're in close proximity to a lot of people, right? Our next door neighbor. it might not be a physical loneliness, but it might be a mental loneliness. What I mean by that is, you know, being heard. We had a presentation not too long ago when we brought, two students in talking, you know, to this work and the workforce and all of this stuff, but before that student came in, he said to me, he said, I don't wanna say anything. But when he got in that room and had the opportunity to speak and really felt like he was being listened to, he went off, he couldn't shut him up, right? And the reason why I bring that up is because it's important to realize loneliness looks different for different communities, different neighborhoods. Because you can be around a lot of people and be lonely and have to deal with certain traumas and certain things that you don't even know how to deal with. And I give this example all the time. Just imagine, you know, leaving your doorstep and you see a friend get shot or a friend leave the community for 10 years and just show back up like, and you're a grown man. Like, that's traumatizing. And we don't talk about it. And we don't equate that with the loneliness that happens in these type of communities, right? And it's not really a question that I'm asking. It's just really to get people's thoughts, you know, when thinking about, you know, having these panels, inviting people from these communities to the table, because it might look totally different than, you know, how it looks for everyone here today.
Yeah, so I think that's a super important piece of this conversation, this idea that powerlessness is aloneness, right? If you don't feel like you have the ability to change the world that you are in, that makes you feel incredibly isolated and alone, right? And so I think we've got to sort of stitch that conversation in together. What are the mechanisms by which people can build power through community, right? How do you, if you feel like connection is not just a way to find friends, but connection is a way to build power, right? And to build agency. Man, that solves two problems at once, right? Because you're connecting in with people, you're feeling that connection, but you're also feeling control of your life, which people don't feel today. And so, you know, that gets into a conversation about political power, but political power is also about fighting loneliness. I'm gonna go one last comment from the audience in the back.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tyrell Sawyer, lifelong resident of Norwalk, associated with the Youth Tax Organization and the state organization, and a proud owner of the business company Sawyer Business Moving. I look forward to it. I'm actually in the process of working closely with certain organizations to basically put together a workforce training, hands-on training program that will require children, you know, from wherever to complete 100 hours of, you know, training. And then, you know, they would be able to come out with me, you know, on actual, you know, job eventually after completing that. So it's kind of the same thing as me offering my services to, you know, everyone. I look forward to helping in any way possible. I'm actually getting ready to start working closely with Norwalk Mutual Aid. And I'm just here as a resource and asset to develop.
Great. Still bring it back inside the table here. You can both go, yeah.
Okay, hi, I'm Celia, a resident of Norwalk, and I could speak to Ginger's comments on how my sister goes to STAR and has been going there for about 50 years, and we were one of the families that thank God for STAR Zoom sessions during the pandemic, because my sister is, she doesn't drive, she doesn't really get out of the house, so that saved us. And then Ginger started she said, hey, do you want to start walking at different Island? And my sister, I'm just speaking, you know, personally from how I've seen my sister change from just a couple of months. She said, I don't have any friends, you know, Celia, like you do, and I wish I did. And since we started walking with Ginger every Sunday at Sherwood Island, which is free, right, for us because we're Connecticut residents, it's given my sister a lot of confidence. She's just a simple little person, 67 years old, with mental health and developmental issues, who lives in Norwalk, and no one would probably ever know. But that one person has said that she really wants to go every week, and she wants to see Ginger and the people that come along. And I see in her, of course, I've known her all my life, but I've seen her change.
Is this a smaller group of people that walk?
This sort, it's, well, that was one of my programs.
How many people walk? How many people walk?
So-
Sorry, I just.
No, it's fine. Actually, so we started with a small crowd program, and the way that Source Rolls works is it's that Sure What Island, to everybody's point, because it's free for us to park there as Connecticut residents, so we all went to Short Island because we didn't want to go to any town parks, and we go every Sunday morning, and the model of the program is I spend time with the folks with disabilities or the folks that have special needs, and then the caregivers have respite time. So my mom works with the caregivers, and I walk with the folks with special needs, and so everybody has their time along and away and some respite time, and then we come back together, and then I go off with the caregivers and do some sort of counseling. Then my mom hangs out with the folks for Shell in particular, right? So it's just one of the programs. We talk a lot about the Flower Power program that I do, everybody knows that, but we do have social seats, and we have source rolls, and we're talking about chatty benches, and we're talking about community tables. There's lots of programs that we're talking about in different towns, and this is one we do every Sunday. And if I could just add quickly, Ginger walks arm in arm with my sister, and nobody ever does that with her. I mean, again, I'm not trying to make this, woe is me, but I know that she has changed her life, and because she takes her arm in arm and walks around, for a half hour and just talks to her. And to your point, Sarah, I'm lucky, she's lucky enough, and I'm lucky enough where I can drive her there. But how many other people in the community don't have someone like me, who basically left their life, came home to live with their sister or whoever it is that needs the help, and do that. So there's so many issues here, that are really relevant. But I just wanted to add that a simple thing like a walk in a public place, I can't tell you what it's done for my sister.
Unfortunately, there's so many hands up, and I really apologize, but I have to be with Senator Rubenthal in Hartford in about an hour and 10 minutes, and so I'm running up against my time here.
Well, yeah, I again want to say thank you and echo what we're hearing around this table. Like Ginger has said, I beg you to please do not leave this room and let it end here. I work with youth, I'm a mother of 3, and the impacts, as you mentioned, post-COVID, coming out of the pandemic, we don't have time to spare for these youth. And if we come back in 2 years and we're looking at these same numbers, we have wasted this time. So I thank you for all being here. Please continue to work as a team, as a group, because we don't have time to waste with these youth. With the absence of leadership and community, they're going to get it somewhere else, and they already are. Social media, from friends, from pop culture. It is our job as a society and as a group to give these children what they've been lacking and to give them that community, and as a way to bring togetherness. So I really, please, just when we leave here today, let's not let this be the end, that we communicate with each other, that we all see each other and work together, because our young people deserve that and they're craving it. So thank you.
I'm going to give you the last word. Sorry, guys.
I love that.
I will be brief. I will be brief. So one of the things, no matter what spaces we bring people together, kids in, we have to be really, really, really intentional about technology. Because we can all be in a cafe sitting together, but everyone's got their heads in their phones and they're not brave enough to put them down and look around and connect with others. So part of block raise is like, you put your phone down. This is not a place, and that's the expectation. And which can kind of hurt you because some people don't take pictures to share on social media to get the thing going, but it's worth it. And so the other thing is, this is not political, talking about block parties, but it is a way to bridge. I've seen it in Wilton. I've seen the difference it makes in teenage lives, older people, what's come out of it. 2 neighbors who were had very different presidential signs on their lawn, right? Didn't want to speak to each other, but they bonded over smoked meats, right? At a block party. So we have more in common, and we only see that when we get together. So I have brought a bunch of these, so I would ask everyone to please take one and be inspired down here to support.
I think that's so, again, I think I'm in politics, and so I think all the time about how to bridge these political divides. I've become friendly with the Republican governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, and Spencer thinks a lot about how to bring people together. And so he convenes little parties and gatherings based upon weird connections that people have with each other. So like everybody that took out a fishing license on the first day of the season, right, which sort of signals a real interest, right? And he brings them together, and it's, you know, you sort of force a connection on one thing, knowing that there are lots of differences on other things. And it's sort of brilliant what ends up happening. I apologize, guys. I'm really sorry, but in order to sort of respect the folks at my next meeting, I'm going to have to stop here. But I think one of the last comments is most important. This is just the beginning. I wanted you to connect a little bit more with the work that I'm doing. I wanted to hear a little bit more about what you're all doing. This is just the beginning of a conversation. Jonathan Small is going to stick around here, and so please connect with him so that we can continue to have follow-up conversations. Bob and Mayor Rilling, the council members that are here, thanks, because hopefully you've heard some ideas here that you can bring back to your work, and we will just be committed to keep the conversation going. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.